Good afternoon. Welcome back. Session 4 of Energy Management System EMS Training Controls. So what we're going to talk about today, last session we went through the patient room VAV kind of in detail, right? So today we're going to talk about critical environments. We're going to talk about operating rooms, the cath lab, the isolation rooms, the pharmacies, all of those areas that are like critical environments that are maintained to a pressure differential and or have some more complicated controls associated with them. So it's going to be a good session. We're going to stay at a relatively high level, right? We want to make sure that you guys understand the information that you need to know. So in general, let me kind of run through housekeeping items. So we are video recording, of course. I put the camera over on here this time, and then I'm recording the screen so that I can put these together for you here afterwards. There is a sign-in sheet going around somewhere. I think Mitch has that. Thanks, man. And then the evaluations are in your stack of papers there. So there's a few more papers here than usual, and we'll kind of go through what those are as we go through. So 90 minutes. This one may actually go a little bit less than that, which is good because we're running a little bit late today, but that's okay. We're going to go through the follow-up items from last time. There's not very many, so that shouldn't take very long. And then here's kind of the agenda, right? So we're going to go through that operating suite, which is basically the south half of level 1. It's the operating and endoscopy suite. We're going through the cath lab, the pharmacies, and then the isolation rooms. It's kind of the world of more complicated pressure-dependent areas that you have in the building. Then we'll go through some Q&A and the evaluations here at the end. So here's kind of the three things that we're going to cover for those areas, for each of those areas, right? So we're going to go through the set points. We want to make sure that you guys understand what the set points need to be. You mentioned that your existing ORs are 0.01 offset. These are similar to that. 0.01 is like your go-to. The pharmacies are going to be a little bit different, but everything else, all your isolation rooms and all of your operating rooms all have a 0.01 offset to the adjacent area. So just remember that number, right? 0.01 is kind of what you need to be remembering, with the exception of these pharmacies, and we'll show you kind of what that looks like. Then we'll go through the graphics. So today we're going to switch back and forth a little bit here between the screen and the web interface. So Michael will go through some stuff. We have some of the explanation up front here on the slides, and then we'll get into what it looks like and how to touch it and where to go to find those set points and see if something's going on. And then we want to look at, this is kind of interactive, right? We want to make sure that we have set up or have a list of what makes sense for you guys. What do you need reported on a regular basis or trends that you need set up? Let's make a list of them. We can set them up initially. We had a little training session earlier today on how to do that, which is like 100 miles an hour, right? So the easiest thing to do now is get a list of what you guys need, standard operating procedures. We'll get all those set up for you, and then the one-off stuff we can help through getting set up in the future. So a couple of follow-up things from last time, right? So alarm notifications. We talked about getting this set up. We met with the IT folks. We now have the ability to send out notifications to the pager and or any email address that we like. So we went through how to set that up. That functionality is there. We're working through with Josh and team and what reports you want and who you want them to report to. Automated reports is the next one. So same thing, we went through a little session at 11 o'clock today to kind of get started with that. And again, we will set up any of them that you have kind of in mind. We can get the initial one set up for you. Michael can do that for you. This is the stuff that we're working on. Cord. This is, yeah, Cord. Michael and Cord, yeah. This is some stuff that's in progress, right? I just don't want to lose sight of it, so just a real quick update, right? The thermostat quantity and locations, we're getting all those knocked out. The VAV label tags is ongoing, and then getting those floor plan documentation links. I have my team marking up those floor plans to gray everything out except for the VAVs so that it's real obvious, and then we'll pass those on to ES2 and I'll upload them. So we're hoping to have all those things done by the end of the week, which is 6/12. So we'll keep you updated on that stuff. Any additional stuff from last time that I missed? Or questions that have come up since? Thing jump out at you? Okay. If it does, holla. Learning objectives for today. So we want to know the basic operation of the HVAC controls for critical areas of the hospital, right? So those areas that you guys need to maintain reports on that CMS is looking for, the JCO is looking for, to make sure that you guys have the appropriate documentation and controls that you need for those critical areas. have knowledge of the set points for each area, and then know where to find that data from the trends and reports, right? So where do you go to find that information if you're looking at it? If something, you get a call and something's going wrong, where do you go? So kind of the common troubleshoots. So let's start with the operating rooms and endoscopy suite. And I have a few slides and then we'll switch back and forth here. So the set points for the endoscopy rooms. So what I tried to do as best as I could is show you here what the pressure monitor will read. So these are relative values. So if you go to the sterile corridor, and I'll show you in a second where that is, well, here, it's right here. So there's a monitor right here that monitors across this doorway, the red area being the lower pressures, and the green areas being the higher pressures. This is how this whole area is kind of set up. So the ORs and endoscopy suite and the clean core are all your highest pressure area, right? They are not different relative to one another, but this whole green area is at A pressure, okay? And then beneath that, you've got the orange area, right? So this corridor then is beneath that. This clean scope falls kind of in the middle. We'll go through that in a minute. And then the red areas are what we would consider kind of negative pressure, right? We want all of the air moving to those areas, not from those areas. So highest pressure, lower pressure, lowest pressure, basically. So what I'm trying to say is that this 0.005 is a pretty minimal offset, but it is maintained here, right? It's also maintained here, but it's monitored at this location. So just remember that piece. 0.01 is the operating rooms, the sterile core, and the endoscopy suite. So that's this green area. Everything here is a 0.01 offset to the adjacent area. So if you go to the monitors that exist at all of these doors, they should be maintaining a 0.01 offset. And that's inches of water power. So the scope processing, both positive and negative. So this is, as a function of the endoscopy suite, they have a dirty scope and then a clean scope, right? And the air moves through this space kind of this way, right? So everything moves into dirty scope. If you put a piece of tissue paper at any of the doors, either to the corridor or that slider in between the clean and the dirty, the air should be moving into that room. It's not monitored. It's not controlled. We don't do anything with that. I think we're going to add a monitor there because Mercy would like to be able to have that information. So we may end up adding a monitor at this door to monitor it off of, well, I'm not sure if they want it here or both, but we'll have to kind of figure out what they want.
Sure, just the previous slide.
Yeah.
Where's your clean scope? 1015.
Yeah, so this is
So
kind of
slightly more positive than the procedure room.
no.
What do we,
This is
relative to what?
Yeah, this was a little hard to explain, and I kind of did it one way and then went through and changed it. So, so the green is the highest, yellow would be the next. So it would be less than this pressure. And what I'm saying here is that this would be an absolute. So these would be a 0.015 relative to the red area. And the sterile corridor would be a 0.05 relative to the red area. You with me?
Okay.
And so this is somewhere beneath this, but we don't know where. Because it's just designed to have the airflow to make that room positive, but it can't be more positive than the endoscopy room. You with me? So I don't know exactly where it is, but I know it's somewhere between this and that, because the air is moving in that direction. And then the dirty scope, which is the negative room, is the same. I know that it's less than this 0.05 because I need air moving into it from the corridor. Air exchanges, so I have these also because these air changes are an important piece of what you guys need to monitor for regulations. So the ORs have a 30 air change per hour, and the endoscopy room actually has a 20 air change per hour. So they're a little bit different in how they operate, but making sure that we have those. So the reports that we kick out do show you the air changes per hour of those areas as well based on the airflows. And that's simple, right? The air you pump into the room divided by the volume of the room tells you how many times you exchange the volume of air in that room. So it's pretty simple. Yeah. So that's kind of how the ORs work. I think we're going to switch over. Michael, I'll come back and switch you back over. Here's what we want to do, right? So we want to go through, show you how to get to the ORs, right? He has the graphics set up for each OR, and I'll show you kind of how these things are tracking, where we find those set points, right? Because they're important that you know where they are and how to find them. And then where are those actual pressures shown, right? So where is the set point that it's trying to track to, and how do I adjust it or make sure that it's correct? And then where is the reading, right? And then I want to go through the smoke purge operation as well, because there are two exhaust fans, 7 and 8, that control the smoke purge exhaust and what that looks like. There shouldn't be much to do with that on the controls. When the fire alarm and the ORs go off, the smoke purge kicks in and it kicks on the exhaust fans and turns down the supply to get the smoke moving out of the room. We want to just make sure you understand how that's working, so that if something was to go wrong, or if there was ever a need to explain that piece, you understand it, right? You shouldn't have much to do with it. And then we'll come back and look at reports, alarms, and needs, and what you guys really want to report out of this thing and when, right? So let's switch over, Michael. I'll switch you, and I'll drive for you here. All right.
So yeah, let's jump down there to the first floor, level 1, area B, right? B is where the area Joe just showed on the map. So what we've done, if you look, we've tried to build the graphics and show the actual equipment that shows the room pressurization. So if you look inside this room, you'll see here's the operating room, here's the clean core. The operating room has a reference into the clean core and the clean core to the hallway, right? So that you can see the pressure references to each one. While we're going through this, things may get crazy because the commissioning guys are up there with our guys right now going through the commissioning process and changing everything, or testing everything in the ORs. So if we see some goofy stuff going on, that's what's going on. So first things first, the set points there's two places really get to them. You can, if you expand the OR, so there's multiple pieces of equipment. Remember how our graphics are set up for one piece of equipment has kind of is over there in the tree. So all of these pieces of equipment roll up to control the OR. So if I want to look at the actual room pressure adjustment, I can go to that room pressure monitor right there. Click on that, and that shows me the pressures. And then you can go up to either the properties page, underneath the control program. Remember those settings, they always have pressure set points and settings are all underneath there, or the logic page. So jump on the logic page, Joe. So you see here's our pressure set point. Notice right here, 0.01, 0.01. This is for the actual, what's controlling, taking the return damper and controlling the room pressurization. So let's jump back to the OR real quick, Joe. So the way this VAV works is it's going to maintain a constant set point all the time, because what we're concerned with is the air changes. Remember? Joe had on there, we want to maintain 30 air changes per hour. So by design, so we want to maintain this as a constant set point all the time to maintain those 30 air changes. If you go into the next one down, that OR doubled up, 108 there, and we scroll down, this is the first time we've done an OR like this, where we had all these kind of calculations, but I think it's really going to work out well because you can see where these adjustments are. If you scroll down some more, Joe, there's right there. So over here on the left side of the page, you can see what's our space volume. Our space volume is, we measured it as 6,550 cubic feet. And so that's a set point that we put in there. And then if we want to maintain 30 air changes, that cubic feet, then this does the math and it tells the VAV how much air it needs to be delivered into the space. Right? So if we got volume of 6,550 cubic feet, we need 30 air changes per hour. 30 would be this divided by 60, you end up getting 3275 is how much CFM you need to exchange out of that room to maintain 30 air changes per hour. Make sense? Simple.
Not to jump ahead, but there's an occupied and unoccupied in the
Yes.
ORs. How is that controlled?
It's right here. So there's an occupancy sensor in the room. If you notice here, unoccupied air changes is 6. And so when it goes unoccupied, it's gonna calculate a different CFM coming out. Instead of 3275, it's gonna go to 655. So if nobody's using the room, it's not being used, it's gonna set back to that, 6 air changes per hour.
How long does it have to set idle before it goes into unoccupied mode?
It's in that sequence, that's a good question, and I read it just earlier too. It's, I'll let Josh, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's, I don't know if it's 30 minutes or, there's a period of time it's gonna set, so before it goes unoccupied. I'll find out the answer.
Okay.
So any questions on that? It's really pretty simple. We started to put all the flows in the VAVs, and it was a little more complicated than just making it simple, making this cubic feet and making adjustments, and that's what that do. It tries to track it. So in order to maintain the air changes, we're at 3275. The VAV is going to try to maintain that between the cold deck and the neutral deck, right? The cold deck is strictly for cooling, so the more we get a call for cooling, the more this set point goes up. When this set point goes up, we subtract the 3275 from what the cold deck wants, and that's what the neutral deck's trying to produce. Make sense? So the more cooling, if we were at full cooling, and this was doing 3275, the set point on the neutral deck would go to 0. So this is going to try to maintain the 3275, and then the return damper, which this is just a normal return going back to unit. This damper is going to try to maintain this room pressure set point of 0.012. We bumped these up this last week to try to make sure we don't fall below when things change and doors open and all that. So it may, the goal is 0.01. The set point on some of these right now is 0.012. So. Any questions on VAVs? They reheat just like a normal VAV. If we were at 100% heating, cooling deck would go to 0 set point. This would be trying to do 3275, and then we're modulating the hot water valve to try to warm the space up. The ORs, endoscopy, operate the same way. They're all on the same equipment. Endoscopy, see, operates the same way. Should have all the alarms up there in the right corner. One of the challenges we've had this week, because we're moving in equipment and everything else, the doors have been open a lot, but hopefully they get all settled and moved in. These pressures are all kind of settled down. So.
Anything to mention on the smoke purge other than that vital flash when it's in smoke purge?
So what happens in smoke purge, and I think what we ought to do is really click on the air handling so that you understand. Go back to the overall OR, one of those ORs. Okay, see, we got these return dampers here in this space. Now, go ahead and go to the 4th floor and click on, click on air handling you want. So these two smoke exhaust fans, when these guys get triggered, it's triggered by the fire alarm systems from the smoke detector inside the ORs. When it gets triggered, the only thing we are doing is we have a sensor tied to that exhaust fan, these exhaust fans, to try to control the pressure to -0.05 to make sure that the space is negative 0.05 going out, so that that smoke that's in the space is being exhausted. But there's really other outside of that. The fire alarm system triggers it. The fire alarm system's going to initiate it, and all we're going to do is maintain that set point in each one of those ORs with that return damper.
Yeah, what happens, right? Just
Yeah.
kind of walk through the sequence of the dampers closing.
Yeah, so when this happens, this damper closes. These are going to start pulling the return directly from the unit. The unit's going to actually open outside air damper and continue to put air into the space, because we're going to put air into the space unless we get a smoke damper or smoke detector that trips on the air handling unit. Then we shut the air handling unit down because we won't smoke in the space. But we're pulling outside air to putting air into the space. That exhaust fan's got to have air to relieve from somewhere. Because if we didn't do that, it's going to pull air from all the outside surrounding spaces. Makes sense? So in order to evacuate that smoke, we're going to pull in outside air and turn the exhaust fans on. Maintain this pressure. Any questions on that? Okay.
So let's talk briefly about alarms, reports, and trending of ORs and what you guys need. I know we've been kind of working through these already, right? So every morning at 6:30, you guys will now get an email of all of the ORs, and it'll report temperature, humidity, air exchanges, and pressure, right? So that'll be emailed. Josh, who does that go to? Just you and the OR people, or do these guys get it?
They will.
Okay.
They certainly will.
Yeah.
They don't have it yet. And if I go look at the reports, I'm not sure that Corey has it set up to go to anybody but himself just yet.
Okay. Yeah.
So temp, humidity, pressure, and air exchanges.
How about trend data for the ORs, and any specific trends that you guys would like to be trending? Do you have any requests for that right now that we should be setting up for you? I mean, obviously, if it comes to mind, we'll do it for you. Just it's worth thinking about.
Temperature and humidity.
Right. So if we want to set up a trend for temperature and humidity, so it's Michael, it's already trended temperature and humidity, right?
Yeah,
And it keeps that information for how long? I'll switch back here.
Let's go see. Go to, jump back down there to the ORs. Click on that first box there, and then let's go to properties, and then your trend sources right there. So currently right now it's keeping the zone RH and temp for 30 days.
And how would we, here's a good example, right? So let's say that we had a problem reported. Where do I go to look at that trend? Like, how do I put that on the graph?
So just go up to the trends,
Yep.
click on that, go to enable points, and then go find space temperature, or I don't know what we call it, minus zone temperature. Scroll on down.
So temp trend low?
That's set point.
Okay.
Scroll down. Zone temperature.
No, temp and relative humidity.
So every point can be accessed just like that. So if you wanted quickly to grab both of them, you can go up to the top and go to, this is where I'm saying, this is a whole other class I think we're going to keep doing in the future, but if you go to say new graph, new trend graph, you have to go underneath, go find in that list right there your temp and your humidity.
Yeah,
So
it's- I open that one.
zone temp and zone humidity, right?
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Then you can save it and up at the top, name it whatever you wanna name it. Temp humidity or something like that. Yep. And now it's saved on there. So it's that easy to grab whatever graphs and stuff. We'll get in way more details later and we get into the finding the trend data and all that stuff.
Quick follow-up question, how do I delete what I just did? Do you know how to delete that?
It's underneath the manual commands and I'll take care of
Okay.
that. We'll get into that, I think, because that's gonna take some showing everybody, so.
Okay, got it.
But yeah, it's easy to go in there and create them, it's easy to go in there and delete them, so.
Okay, any other questions on the ORs? So all three of the ORs in the endoscopy suite operate that same way. Like I said, we're probably, it looks like gonna add another monitoring point for that endoscopy between the scope rooms, so we'll let you know.
Yeah, we're just gonna try to get it done by the end of this week, early next week.
Okay.
I think we got one to train that tomorrow.
Okay, so moving on to the cath lab. Level 2 cath lab, everybody is familiar with the space. The offset is 0.01, right? So it's positively pressured 0.01. The idea here, right, is that we keep contaminants out of the space when we have people's chests open. I think people generally know that. It's a 20 air changes per hour requirement, okay? So we'll want to see that too. That's another good one to put on that trend, right? Temperature, humidity, and air changes. So there's not much to this one. I was gonna say, it's positive relative to the corridor outside, should be maintained at 0.01, and why don't we just look at it?
Yeah, look at the
Yeah.
graphic.
Make sure you guys are
The
familiar
only
with what
other
that's at.
thing is it does, similar to the ORs, we do have a smoke purge mode or smoke evacuation mode. And I guess, yeah, so the deal here is when we go into the smoke purge mode, this exhaust fan come on, these dampers are gonna close on the return, and we're just gonna pull the smoke out of the space. And under normal operation, this return damper is gonna modulate to maintain the pressure just like we did in the ORs, right? VAV is gonna maintain the constant air changes, and this is gonna maintain the pressure in the room. I think there might have been a little more specific with some of the humidity set points. I think that's why you might see that different on this one. But should operate these same way, the ORs.
And the smoke evac dampers are not reading correctly? Because they should be closed under normal operation.
Yes, there was, they flipped them, there was something that got flipped, I'll have to go look and see. 'Cause
Yeah,
back when they went back and they were doing the testing on it the last time with the fire troll, I think they ended up switching the contacts we were actually monitoring for some reasons. So I'll look
Okay,
at that.
we'll just add that to our follow-up
Yeah.
items, make sure that gets corrected.
Yeah, because they're actually closed. But we wouldn't be able to maintain that pressure.
So, cath lab, essentially another operating room, doesn't have the dual duct, right, has a single duct, and it has this one has the low temp supply, from the chiller number 4 on the roof, right?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Pretty,
I think that door open's gonna be problematic.
It
I
holds
don't know
open
how we're
too
gonna
long.
deal with that operationally, from the control room to the cath lab itself,
Hmm.
because it doesn't have a closure on it, and they just leave it open all the time. I don't know if it was, surely it wasn't supposed to have a closure on it, but maybe something to follow up on there.
Sure.
They like for the door to be open so that they can freely walk between the control room and the lab, but that's also going to screw up our report ports.
It's a pivot door, I think, right? If I remember right. So sometimes you can put like the spring-loaded pivot hinges, so it re-centers itself and they can kind of walk through it however they want, you know?
Yeah.
Rather than trying to add a closer. I'll investigate that too tomorrow. Okay. And the cath lab operates, like I said, just like an OR, so the trends, the emails, those things right now are gonna be set up the same. Totally customizable. If there's other data that you guys need or want, you can definitely find it. So, pretty simple. It's the only one of its kind. Okay. So the pharmacies, these are a little bit more complicated. We've got two of them. They operate the same. The air flows for them are a little bit different from level 2 to level 3 because level 3 has 2 hoods in it, right? And level 2 only has 1 hood. So this will take a little bit of explanation, so bear with me. So this is kind of a diagram of what it looks like up there, right? I'm sure everybody's familiar with what the pharmacy looks like. You have basically the main pharmacy area. You go through this door into the ante room, and then there's a buffer room positive and a buffer room negative where they have the hoods on either side, right? So these offsets are important. So if you look at the monitors on the wall, these are what you should see. So the set points basically are the ante room. There's a monitor right here on the wall before you go in. It should read 0.02 positive. So that is measuring the ante room relative to the pharmacy. It should be 0.02 positive. Then, from the ante room into the positive buffer room should be an additional 0.035. So you'll see this 0.035 on the wall, right? But what that means is that it's 0.055 relative to the pharmacy. So from here to here is 0.055, but you'll see this 0.035 because we're adding them. You with me? Follow me? And then on the negative buffer room, this is negative, right? So it needs to be a negative 0.03 relative to this ante room. That's what you'll see on the wall. The green numbers are what you're going to see on the wall, right? So that should read negative 0.03. And that's maintaining the air moving into that space at all times. And if you're doing the math, you're realizing that that is a 0.01 offset from this pharmacy, right? And the reason that's important is when we were setting up these controls, the way that they are controlling right now is based on these green numbers. They're trying to maintain these set points, right? An alternate way to set that up could be to use those absolute numbers. Make the pharmacy 0, go 0.02 to here, go 0.055 to here, and 0.01 to here, if we had those reference points. But we have them set up in between each of the rooms. You with me? So if I had a tube from here to here, and from here to here, and from here to here, I could set them up alternatively to monitor these numbers. Sometimes that could lead us to a little bit less fluctuation, because when we open this door, the air rushes out of this room. And then these two are trying to catch up to it. So that's why these pharmacies were so tough to balance, right? We got them under control. They're pretty delicate, quite honestly, right?
Plus they have the fan filter,
Yeah.
whatever the power fan.
Plus they have powered fan filter units, yeah, which is not helping things. So anyway, it's important that you guys understand how it's set up and how it's
McCarthy did a
represented.
good job of making sure they sealed everything.
Yeah.
They did too good of a job. In the walls, there's not enough leakage. And so really, funny thing is that one room, 60 CFM, we would go from above and be able to set point out of bounds. Only 60 CFM. You know, trying to measure 60 CFM is crazy.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah,
but-
so it's worth thinking about, right? If you guys are having some issues with some of these little pressurized rooms, you need some leakage in them. If they're really sealed up really tight, what we ended up doing with these doors, we cranked up those seals on the sweeps on the door, just cranked them all the way up so that it could leak underneath the door. That helps us balance out. You don't get, like when you open this door, it doesn't go, right? Which is essentially what it was doing. And so instead, like you always have that air movement underneath the door. You get, I don't know, 75 CFM or something that way, right underneath the door cut. And so that helps when that door's moving to get less of a reaction. Because we don't want those stiff reactions, because the controls are trying to keep up with it and they'll overshoot and it gets kind of crazy. So that's just kind of context for how these are set up and why they're so difficult to maintain. These are different, right? Your .01s don't apply here, obviously. These are very different set points. They're required for the pharmacy. The level 2 pharmacy will spit these out directly. We'll set up the report so you can get them, and the pharmacy folks can get them where they need them. Level 3 is going to be a little different, right? The Mercy folks want to have their own parallel system. They're going to install a Mesa Lab system that's completely outside of this. You won't have the data. It reports to inside of itself, and the pharmacy guys will have their own thing. So just be aware, right? There'll be 2 sets of data out there. They should match because they're monitoring the same thing, but they're being calculated in different ways or reported to different sources. So just the thing. But they're all working, right? They're all set up. They're all working. You guys are aware of the interlocks, right? You know that these doors you can only open one at a time. The mag locks are all interlocked between one another. So don't prop a door open, or you might get stuck in there or stick somebody else in there. If you have a door open, they can't get out. There is an override switch. I've seen.
There's one other thing too. If you notice, so Joe's got some numbers on here. These are original design numbers. These air changes. If you go and look at the set points that are actually on the graphics right now, it may not be 1046. It's going to be somewhere in between here is where we ended up balancing. We've got enough, as much air changes as we could to control the space, get as many air changes as or more than what's required for the space, but it may not be exactly this 1046. If you ever went back and looked at the original drawings and you're looking at something and you put it back at 1046, you may have start having problems with your pressure control, just because we had to drop some things. And same way on the 3rd floor, we didn't change it very much, I don't think on either one, but it's not this number.
Yeah. The smaller the room and the higher the airflows, the tougher it is to control, right? The swifter you have to be, and we don't have like Phoenix valves that'll make that happen. So, notice this was designed at 94 air changes per hour, which is crazy high. 30 is your requirement, right? So all of those spaces require a 30 air change. They're super small, so they don't require that much air to get there. They had over-designed the airflow, which is fine. We just had to back it down somewhere in the realm of compliant to make it work. So you will see those set points different. So let's go look at those, right? Let's show them where those set points are, because this is there's a lot of stuff going on here. So, yeah. So this is all of that graphic on your graphics, right? So you see down below, you've got the buffer room, you've got the anti-room in the middle, and then you've got the positive buffer room and the negative buffer room. And those things are being controlled by the 3 VAVs and then 2 exhaust terminal units that are hooked up to exhaust fans. So go ahead, Michael, show them a little more.
So you notice, look at the set points, negative 0.03. This is actually, if you look on the deal, I think it's supposed to be 0.02 is the set point that Joe showed on there. But we put it up to 0.028 to give us some buffer, because when they opened the doors and things, we had stuff happening, and it would cause this to drop just below 0.02. And of course, the pharmacy inspector, whoever wanted to, or the pharmacy folks wanted to keep that at 0.02 or above at all times. But the rest of the set points, so if you look at original, what do we have, 10,040 originally, so our set points are 910 instead of 1040. So we did increase, or we did decrease them, but we try to keep them as high as we could. So. This is another one of the kind of different things. We're actually using VAV boxes to control, you noticed in your ORs you had dampers. They're just a Belimo actuator on a damper, using that to control the return into the space, to control space pressure. These are actually return VAVs. So the VAVs with nothing in them other than the damper and the VAV controller. And so as we're exhaust fans maintain an 1.5 inch of duct static, these 2 VAVs are controlling this room pressure here and here. Now this one's controlled into the return, but these 2 have to be exhausted. So they're controlling the, going back to the exhaust fan.
And maybe you guys should definitely learn from our pain and suffering. So one of the challenges we had in getting this space to operate was the air handler ramping down, right? So we have a mix of pressure dependent and pressure independent systems within here. What that means is these return air dampers that are feeding the buffer room and the ante room, those are what is controlling, right, to maintain that pressure. The challenge is on the back side of that, that's all air handler unit return, right? It's not an exhaust fan like it's happening in the negative buffer room. So we don't have control over the static on that, because as the whole floor gets satisfied, then the fan ramps down and the return static comes down, and those dampers become less control-y. That's the technical term. So like, it was a big challenge. So what we ended up doing, right, so you know, is we prioritized the air on second floor manually through the return system. So we first dumped all of the air back into the pharmacy. It comes down and it splits, feeds the pharmacy and the cath lab, and then it goes over and feeds the rest of the floor. So we manually manipulated those dampers to prioritize that first, right? So this gets satisfied before the rest of the space. You guys should know that, because if you have issues on one side or the other, you gotta know kind of what we did and how we set it up to make it work. One option to fix this solution is like an inline return fan, right? Because that way you can maintain a consistent static on that damper. You can control the fan that would keep your return static and allow you to control that damper all the time. But maybe for the future if it becomes a problem, right? So just as we were suffering through it, I figured you guys could probably use that information as well.
But it is, what Joe was talking about, agrees at the point. If somebody goes up to the air handling unit and leaves the door open on the return on the air handling unit, those two labs are not going to alarm.
Right.
So it's just something on air handling units 3 and 4 on levels 2 and 3, which have the pharmacies, we have to have some return static right here. And if the door on the return of the unit gets open or something happens on the return and we lose that pressure, you're going to get alarms or labs on the pharmacies.
So the good example is like a filter change, right? If somebody's gonna go change those pre-filters in that unit, you gotta like shove them in there with the filters and close the door. Don't leave the door open while you're like moving back and forth and shutting the filter down.
Hang on a second before you start giving those kind of suggestions. We have other policies in place.
Okay, all right. So just be aware that if the, like I said, if the return air doors are open, you're gonna lose that static and it's gonna alarm the pharmacies. So, good enough. Okay, so trending and or reporting for the pharmacy. Anything specific that we need to set up now or be thinking about?
I think it's mostly temperature and humidity. Pressure, pressure.
And is this something you guys need emailed out on a regular basis, or is this something you guys want, or that you want trending for a period of time?
It'd be nice if this was just like a weekly trend that dumped into an email.
Okay.
They call occasionally to see how many air exchanges the room gets at any room.
So you want temp, humidity, pressures.
Pardon me, the Dutch Bowl's got my allergy balls that are up.
It does me too, but I've taken 2 different medications. They don't prescribe them. Joe's gonna be up here talking.
And air change. It's the same report for the ORs that you want to in the pharmacy, right? I mean, they'll put air changes on there too. Yes.
But a week.
And weekly.
Weekly trend, I think.
Anything else on pharmacies? I didn't put the level 3 diagram up here, but I can get it for you, so that you kind of see how that goes together as well. It controls the same way. The airflows are just set up differently because of the 2 hoods in that pharmacy.
Hang on. So on the graphic, where does it identify our air exchanges?
Doesn't on the graphic.
Okay. Be nice if we had that quick reference. Is that possible? Is it
Yeah.
another calculation? Is it just a simple?
We can put it on there. We'll just figure it out. Even if it's not, I don't think we're calculating it like we did the ORs, because these were set up constant. ORs were actually can set back and do different things, and so we had to put in that
So if they're set constant, then they won't fluctuate, room air exchanges, be constant.
Constant. Pretty sure those are all constant. Oh,
It should be.
I think you're.
Yeah, they don't have an occupied or unoccupied mode, so they'll always be trying to track to a constant. Now, as the doors go open and close, they'll be moving. So, yeah, we can add air
But,
changes.
yeah, I don't think we ever changed it. But, so one or two ways, we can never either, we can go measure the size of rooms and we can calculate it, throw it on here, or we can put the number of what it is, should be at that seven. It's not, we can do it.
Okay. Anything else, pharmacies? Okay, so isolation rooms is the next one. So you guys, I think, are pretty familiar with isolation rooms. You've had them, you have them in your existing hospital. There's nothing overly complicated or tricky here. I just want to make sure that we're clear on kind of how it goes. So for each of your isolation rooms, and this is level 2 in the med-surg area, you have one sensor between the corridor and the anteroom, and you have one sensor between that anteroom and the isolation room.
Time
Yeah,
it, back to pharmacy.
yeah.
In the main pharmacy, are we monitoring humidity there as well? We changed all the stats out to humidistats.
On the second floor, yes.
Scott, has there been a request to trend that information for the main, not the anti, the buffer, negative, and the positive, but just the main hub of the
Yeah, we put
pharmacy?
in 4 temperature and humidity sensors in
We're not necessarily controlling
Right.
humidity, but we're monitoring.
there. Yes. Yep.
So I think we need a trend for that space as well. I don't know how many FTs are in there.
For the main
They have
pharmacy, right?
Yeah.
They have a sense of scientific humidity monitor in there, so they are trying to monitor humidity.
Okay, that's a good question.
All right, Joe, sorry.
No worries. Okay, isolation room. So pretty simple. You've got 2 differential pressure monitors there. One between the corridor and the ante, one between the ante and the isolation room. We don't measure between the corridor and the isolation room because when someone's in there, no one should be using this door. This door should only be used to get a person into the room, right? So people should not be using that corridor door to go in that. Now,
I mean, it's not supposed to be processed.
supposed to, yeah, it's supposed to, and do different things. These rooms have 2 modes, right? They have isolation and they have what is called setback mode, right? So I'm going to show you that here in a minute, but setback mode is basically neutral, right? So you can set these up as a normal neutral room or an isolation room. 12 air changes per hour is what you guys are required to have in your isolation rooms. So same thing, we can look and see and put that on the graphic if we need to, and send you that information.
So, wait a minute. Typical patient rooms are required to have a minimum room air exchange, aren't they? So if we are setbacks neutral, then we're not necessarily satisfying the typical patient room requirements.
No, because the air exchange is based on supply air. Well, whichever is more. So if they're equal, you just take one, and then you calculate the volume versus that. You're still moving air, supply and return, it's just neutral. You're still exchanging the air in the room with it.
We just won't be exhausting more than we're putting in.
Right.
We will be exhausting the exact same amount.
Yeah.
But that doesn't go below the minimum room air exchange for a patient.
I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't know what the requirement
I think it's like
is.
6.
6. Yeah.
6 sounds familiar. I can look while we're talking through this.
Okay. Yeah. It shouldn't. Yeah. That's
Okay.
a good question.
So, I mean, that's more of a design team question, right?
Yes, that's okay. We'll follow up, make sure that that's the case. This is the place to ask. So let's go hit one of these isolation rooms and do that. Go here, and this is the one that I was trying to. Is this?
Yeah, jump up one over on the. think some of these limits, where we change these colors, we're gonna have to adjust it, because it's really tight. It's showing red when you're actually only 1/1000th of a difference, so it's really, I don't think it's bad.
Or we bump those up to a .012 as well, right? So just make sure we stay above the
But,
point.
yeah.
Because those are nuisance alarms.
This, I think, is just a visual thing. It's not necessarily a alarm deal that I've got. Well, yes, it is, I'm sorry. It says it was talking about room pressure.
2 minimum air exchanges, outdoor per hour, outdoor air exchange per hour, minimum total is 6 for typical location.
Okay. So I can calculate the volume of the room and typical room, and we can make sure that doesn't happen. We'll verify that.
I would assume the outside air, room air exchange is figured at the air handler, obviously not at the room itself, so that should be.
Yeah, or it's like a 30% minimum.
Right.
So we give you 2 of the 6, right? Yes. It's a question, I can ask that. Okay, so Michael, quick walk us through kind of how this is all working together.
Okay, so each one of your isolation rooms has a dedicated exhaust fan. The dedicated exhaust fan.
You mean it's not on building restroom exhaust?
No.
That's good.
I mean, I think you might have some old stuff in it. But no, each one of them actually is a really good deal. Each one of the exhaust fans are dedicated to an isolation room. Notice this, we've got 3 exhaust terminals. Again, these are exhaust terminal VAVs. And these guys, this guy here is just maintaining a set point because it's for the patient room bathroom. So it's just trying to maintain the exhaust needed to exhaust the restroom all the time at 125 CFM. And then these 2 guys here are actually, your exhaust terminals are controlling the actual room pressure. One for, of course, being your ante-room, which is the .01 offset, negative offset to the corridor, and then your actual patient room, which is negative .01 to the ante-room. The exhaust fan, of course, is kind of self-contained. It's going to maintain a set point, test and balance. Control guys work to try to, or once they to set up what that exhaust static need to be so that we can maintain constant static pressure so the boxes can maintain CFM.
It's a dedicated exhaust fan for this isolation room as well, which is worth mentioning. Each of the isolation rooms have their own exhaust fan, so you're not trying to share it in.
So probably just in my experience, when I've done it, a lot of times you got an isolation room problem, it's generally going to be a lot of times exhausting. If you're not getting enough negative static, then it's going to be your exhaust fan. That's the only piece that's in the exhaust system in those guys. Any questions on the isolation rooms? They're really, just like all the other pressure, zone pressure controls, we're just maintaining it with VAVs and exhaust.
So there's 2 isolation rooms on level 2. What's the 2 exhaust fans associated with those?
So 18 is on this one. We should be able to click on the other one. It's over there.
45 hertz. All right.
Let's go back to the other one. Oh, I didn't lie to you. There was one exhaust fan feeding both isolation rooms. So I thought they were dedicated. Click on the other one.
Isolation 2. Okay. We have 18.
Well, that's the same information for that exhaust fan, so. All right, I'll make sure I just lie to you.
Okay.
Just one for each
Hold
isolation
on.
room. Maybe there's one one for those two. So
One family was down for hose. Sure got the motor and some shit, belts handy there, Scotty.
any questions on isolation areas? Again, all those set points, all the CFM set points, the room pressure set points, everything's either in the properties page on a control program, or you can go find it in a logic page. Again, it's one of those things that we don't adjust very often, so that's why it's just not, we haven't thrown all those set points on this page, because if it's working, then I mean, really, should be nothing to adjust, but it all can be.
They are both fed off of 18.
They are.
They are, yeah.
Well, I was wrong. That's probably been the first time in
6 minutes.
47 years it's ever happened, but
Right.
no. Sorry about that. I misspoke.
We'll have to grab tar and feathers, stick it
That's
outside.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, what data do you guys need from isolation rooms? I want to go through kind of how they get switched. Also, I think you guys saw that already in the ED, but I'll show you how to set them into the offset mode. So you guys have this handout.
Golly, that sucks, man. Really?
So this is the monitor on the wall, right? Pretty simple. You guys,
You got one patient.
you guys know how to use these QR codes? Anybody ever done these before? You just like pull up the camera on your phone and hit that. So that's a little video on what these things do and how to change them. They're just like 3 minutes, if you ever need that. These are really simple though. You swipe, you hit this little mode at the bottom, and you can say offset mode or isolation mode. And that's it. And they'll go from one to the other. In the offset mode, or setback, I'm sorry. Setback mode. Setback or offset?
Setback.
Yeah, setback. Setback mode. We'll put it as neutral. So they should all be green all the time. Michael's making sure of that right now.
Yes.
Except for the door alarms. Yes, except for the door alarms, right? When they hold the door open, these things are gonna flash red as well, because you get those door alarms as well. So this is pretty simple. This was actually the agenda for a little demonstration we did with the nurses, just showing them kind of green, red means it's an alarm, blue is when it goes to setback mode, it'll be blue, right? So when you see that, that's what that means. Pretty simple.
So that's a question, I don't think we really, they didn't have specifics on how fast to alarm. So say somebody holds the door open for a period of time. Do you guys, how fast do y'all generally alarm in the main hospital?
We don't have alarms for doors.
No, we got
What about pressure?
the pressure monitor will go into alarm.
What,
But as far as the order, which I guess that's what this deal is.
Yeah. But if you was to, well, even hold the door open and the pressure was to be, because it's gonna affect the pressure, now you're not maintaining the negative pressure anymore or enough. How long does it go? Because the reason I ask is because these things are set like really super, like 5-10 seconds. And I thought that was way too fast. So we
Open the door, give them time to shut before it goes to alarm, I mean, or you're gonna give them all the time.
30 seconds, 45 seconds.
I didn't know if you guys already had kind of standards or what you was familiar with or what expectations were, or if the nurses had expectations that, I mean, there's not, I mean, there's quite a few of them, but it would take very long before justice. So it's the reason I asked if there was, you already had some kind of standard, we would try to make them meet that standard. So. 'Cause it did get that specific in the sequence. So. And we don't want a nuisance,
No standards, I think it's just something that we have to work through.
Okay.
Is there a way, Michael, to, because it seems like the situation would be that like, you know, these things are all, most of these are on auto operators, the ORs and the cath lab. And what happens there is someone else goes through that set of doors and it bounces, right? And then it's held open too long and the thing goes into alarm. Is there any way to say like, report the low pressure alarm unless the door alarm is going off? Because then, you know, it's not a real pressure alarm, it's just the door that's open? Are you able to put that kind of logic in it?
I
No.
don't know. I'll have to look and see.
Might cut down on nuisance alarms, right? Because if they're holding the door open for some reason, yeah, the pressure's gonna drop, but you don't.
I know for a fact, it kicks out the door alarm, if they hold the door open. May not kick out the pressure, I don't know.
It should, because the
We're
pressure's gonna
generating
drop.
pressure, some instances that we're generating pressure.
I see.
Because I know for a fact, I don't wanna send an email every time that happens.
Right.
So let's first let the nurse know. You know, let the nurse know they can take, you know, see what's if the door's left open, they got an alarm, whatever. I mean, they're the ones that. But I think the rest of our alarms, we're talking 3 to 5 minutes before I'm gonna shoot an email. And that may not be long. I don't know what those are, but I think that's somewhere where our alarm set is. We're not gonna send you an email. If not, we would be shooting emails all the time. I don't want to pay you with emails.
Yeah. Anything else on?
Jump over that dashboard real quick, let's just talk about kind of, I mean, that's something that's intriguing, I think, but it's flashing red, so is that supposed to be splashing red, or is that like the long term?
You're talking about this big dashboard?
Yeah.
Yes.
So like alert.
Each one of those air handling units has a little alarm. Whether it's pressure, or it's out of bounds, it's the alarms that TME has in there that they guess. Now, not all of those are set up to where they email out right
No, that's
now.
fine.
It's just, but they
It's
are.
kind of a cool graphic though, is my point,
Yeah.
right? So if you just want, if you're just kind of doing a general overview.
Yes.
And you're looking at the entire system from an air side.
And if you'll notice, it takes it a little bit to pull in all that data. You don't realize it's pulling in every bit of information from all these VAVs, it's tallying all them, all the air handling units, all the CFM value, all the air side is being tallied up at one time. So you click on it, and it takes 30 seconds to pull up, and that's why, it's because it's so much data. But you should be able to click on, go to HE2's VAV summary, this one right here. Oops. Yeah, just click on that. Yep. No, I'm not lying to you. It's taking you back to the jump back, hit the back button up there.
Can I go over here?
Back up here. I didn't know if you guys know that, yeah, that back button. This tells you how many VAVs are in heating and cooling, how many they're sitting in that green area, blue area. So it's 59 of HE 1.4 satisfied. One's above set point, we got 4 below. CFM wise, all of them are basically ideal, so we don't have none that are extremely above or below CFM set point. And so as all that other data gets pulled in from all these other VAVs, you should be able to see that on each one. The point and the reason that is so you can determine where your critical zones are. After to kind of look and see, because I'd be willing to bet almost every day it's the same zones, the same thing. So then we know what to go troubleshoot or what to go look at. But, you know, you bring up a point, Josh, when I've looked at that several times, we gotta figure out what, because we've got everything in there now that can make that thing flash, and I don't know that if we're above the static set point or below the static point. One thing we did, these air handling units, we're controlling all the air handling units down to the pressure on the floors. But we were worried about building up too much static up at the top of the air handling units. So if we lost communication on what's down on the second floor, with air handling unit 2, air handling unit 2 automatically defaults and will start running that static pressure sensor that's up in the unit. So maintain that. So if somebody goes and cuts the comm cable, because the way we're controlling is all the VAVs tell the air handling unit what to do. We lose that comm cable to all the VAVs. Air handling unit still runs, it maintains the static up there. It's up there, it's like maintaining 3 inches of duct static up the air handling unit. But down on the floor, you know, we only had 1.5 inches down there. So we had the tab guys go through with us and set those static pressure transducers.
So, questions over anything we covered today? Pretty high level overview, just kind of introduction to how these things operate and are controlled. Is that a deep enough level? Is there more? Is there other stuff you guys need to know or interested to know? Think about it, write it on the evaluation today, or just give us a shout. We'll be happy to cover anything more. So, real quick review of the items to follow up, right? I made a note that we should upload the sequence of operation pages to like the OR, Michael, and the endoscopy and the cath lab. Get a documentation tab on those sheets. And then in terms of the email for the operating rooms, 6:30, we're setting that up. Just need to get the right people in there.
Yeah, I did it.
Cool. The cath lab, we're gonna double check those smoke purge dampers, make sure that they're showing correctly, or in the correct position. And then I'll check the door for the control room and make sure that there's a closer on it or not a closer on it. We will set up the same report for the cath lab as we do for the ORs, because I think they operate the same. You stepped out at that point, is that right, with that same report? The pharmacies, so we're gonna send you a weekly trend for temperature, humidity, pressures, and air exchanges, similar to the other reports. We're gonna add the air exchanges to the graphic. And we're gonna do it for the pharmacy, ante, and 2 buffer rooms, right? So we can track that main pharmacy space as well. And then on the isolation room, just gonna follow up with to make sure that we never drop below the required air exchanges of 6 when we're in isolation. What did I miss? Anything else I'm supposed to follow up with? Do that stuff for next time. And then next week's agenda, so I gave you guys an updated copy of kind of the whole program agenda as well, but here's what we're here for next time, right? We're kind of caught up, we're right on track to do kind of the smaller units next time, VCUs.